everybody, and welcome back to the channel. So today we've got something from Recoil. I know that it's tough to find, a good bargain, a good quality subwoofer. There's so many to choose from, but we're going to help you with that. So let's take a look.
So this is a new subwoofer in the Recoil lineup. This is this SW12D4. It's $400 and available at recoilusa.com. So let me know in the comments what you think of this video. Hit that like button, and if you want to see more of these videos, hit that subscribe button for more. So I'm going to spare all of you guys me opening the stupid box. So anyways, I will say that, it comes packaged well. That's one thing that Recoil does good job on is their packaging and whatnot. So we got the owner's manual here, and this is a pretty decent owner's manual. And it kind of goes through a lot, obviously gives you how to wire it. This is a dual 4 ohm voice coil, so we can basically wire it to 8 or to 2 ohms. And gives you all the dimensions and all the different stuff. One thing it does not really, I guess it kind of gives you, I guess you could use this as a cutout template. So as we go through here, it really talks about the enclosures and the pros and cons and stuff like that, sealed versus vented. And it actually gives you recommendations on both. It tells you the sealed basically is going to take a lot more power to get the same amount of output as a vented enclosure. And here it actually going to show you, the difference between a sealed. A sealed is going to be more linear and softer roll off, whereas your ported box is going to have a big peak, right? And you can use this and tune it and do a lot of stuff with that peak. And then it also mentions, when in doubt, kind of my philosophy, if you really don't have the ability to build a good properly ported and tuned box, don't. Just go sealed. And so in our test that we're going to do, the sealed is going to be the way to go, because I think it really levels the playing field. We can't build a custom box for every subwoofer. That's just way too much. So they actually go through and they'll give you examples. They also recommend using WinISD to go ahead and design your enclosures. And so we're going to go with sealed. And if you look on here, it goes and it tells you that a 1.06 cubic foot is a decent sized box. And we found that across the board, 1 cubic foot box, even for these big monsters, because the motor structures are so big on these woofers these days, they can totally handle a 1 cubic foot box. So here we're going to go over our specifications, if I can get the glare to go away. One of the things that doesn't list in here is the FS, okay? But I'm going to assume it's going to be around 30 hertz, because the frequency response is 30 to 400 hertz, and then it recommends using a 30 hertz subsonic filter. So I'm going to say that it's going to be somewhere in the low 30s, which is fine, which is pretty decent. It's got a 3-inch voice coil and a ferrite magnet, obviously. X-Max is a little slim. 13 millimeters, I'm going to say, is not really a huge amount, but we'll see if that's a factor or not when we compare it to the JL. Recoil does a good job telling you what you got, how to use it, because I think that's important, and I think that's stuff that maybe lesser brands kind of overlook. So let's see what you get for the $400 price tag for one of these things, and you can go on their website. It's on their last page of their subwoofer section. So this thing's pretty decent. It's about 7 5/8 depth, and the cone material is listed as a woven glass. So it looks like carbon fiber, but it's kind of the same weave. But usually they dye the fiberglass black to look like carbon fiber, and that's really not a big deal. It's not like, oh, that's kind of cheap. I think it's pretty cool. So I think it's got some sort of a paper pulp cone with the fiberglass over it. It's double stitched. Let's flip this thing over. It's really got a cool look. Oh, I got to mention that it does have a ring over the top, which this thing is cool. It's a cast machined aluminum, and it's really a pretty neat looking piece. So all right, so this thing is, it's even more beautiful on the bottom side than it is on the top. It's got a cover over the side of the magnet. Looks like a polished aluminum on the bottom. Looks like it's vented quite well. 3-inch voice coil on this thing. And one of the things that this thing has that really, you don't really see a lot, are these are screw down terminals on the terminals here. The wires going this way, and it looks like they can hold up to, God, that's pretty big. You know, it's like 4 gauge or something. But in here you can see the cone. It's kind of a pulp material. I'm trying to see if I can see the spider on this thing. I think it said it's something about a 3-layer or something spider on this thing. No, it's beautiful. I love the machine work on it. Mounting this thing inverted, I mean, it looks just as good coming as it does going. So this is definitely an upgrade from anything that they've had in the past. You know, so let's get this thing in a box, and I'm going to break it in. I'm going to listen to it for a few days, and then we're going to compare it up against the JL audio. Okay. So when we compare these two, the JL audio's frequency response is 20 hertz. So the JL audio is going to play a bit lower, the W6. Again, recommended 1 cubic foot. You know, I believe the X Max on the JL is 19 millimeters, and you know that's pretty substantial. So the RMS power handling on this says 1200. The JL says 600. We're going to be powering this thing with about 750 watts. So let's get these things boxed up and let's see, because you know this is the JL audio is $900. Okay, this is $400, and we're gonna see is it worth it to spend the more money? And you know, maybe for some, maybe for others, not so much. But you know what? Let's listen to these with our ears. All right, I've got the Recoil SW12 in the Silverado. We're running it on a monoblock wired to 2 ohms, making about 950 watts. So let's give this thing a test, see how she does. All right, well, let's see what this thing's made of. See how much SPL this thing could do. So anyways, you know, we're using this thing in kind of more of an SQL kind of sense, and I'd be honest with you, I'm kind of blown away with, you know, how musical this sub really is. I know this YouTube music is really kind of bass heavy, but you know, I was listening to it on a lot of classic rock, and it's tight and it is very nice. It's not real boomy. It's very controlled, and it's pretty good. So anyways, I'll save that for the end, but for now, let's see what this thing can do. So I got the sub turned around facing towards the back wall of the truck, and we'll see what it'll do.
like we got 124.9.
Well, the Recoil survived, and it did quite well. Totally impressed. So, you know, this thing is nice. One thing I don't necessarily care for, I don't really care for the kind of the ribbed surround look. If this was a smooth surround, I think this sub would look really classy. But this is definitely a huge upgrade from their previous Echo Pro model. This thing's great. I like it. So, anyways, well, the question of the day is, how did it fare against the JL W6? V3. So, here's what we're looking at here. And I kind of ranked some of the things and some of the specs. So on price, this thing kills it. I mean, this thing's 40% of the price. 950 versus 400. That's just absurd, you know. So, you know, that's where the JL is gonna really lose out every time. It's gonna get its butt kicked. Price, it's just ridiculous. On output, you know, the JL was almost 3 dBs, 2.5 dBs higher. You know, that's going to be attributed to some of these factors next. The sensitivity was a little bit higher, and where it really kind of falls a little short, I'm going to say, is the X-Max. 13 millimeters really isn't enough. I mean, you can see in the video, this thing did boogie though, but 13 millimeters is not quite really what it should be. But still, the sub sounded really good. Really impressed with it. So the FS on this thing really isn't that low. 36 hertz, and I'm not 100% sure that's the actual FS of this speaker, but it did seem to play low. It sounded good down low, really had a deep, full sound to it. And I will tell you, the power ratings of 1200 to 2400 watts, they may seem a little inflated, may seem a little exaggerated. I was giving this thing about 950 watts, and it didn't feel like it wasn't happy, like it was losing control. Where I felt like the JL audio on 950 watts, I don't know. I think they both could probably handle a bit more, but I think this Recoil could handle a lot more. So sound wise, that JL audio on like rock music, classic rock, sounds great. Like it's a really solid kind of an SQL sub. And the Recoil, I gave it an 8.5, and I wouldn't balk at that. I think that 8.5 in this shootout is going to be a pretty decent standing, you know. And then on real heavy bass stuff, the Recoil just didn't quite put out as much bass, although it did seem to rattle the truck a bit more than than the JL did, which is kind of odd. And again, the JL really isn't really an SPL kind of, you know, pound and bass sub. And build quality and looks, the JL, I gave it a 9 because I think it's probably a pretty decent, well-built sub. Hopefully it's still made in the United States. I don't know. It doesn't say it, I don't think, anywhere on it, but it's a little boring, okay? And if you're going for that, then that's you know, that's cool. This one, not boring at all. I tell you what, I like the fact that it's got this cool billet ring on it. Super nice. I dig that. The carbon fiber look, it's fiberglass, but it's dyed to look like carbon fiber. That's a nice touch. Again, I'm not a big fan of the surround. The center cap, it's okay. I don't think it's great, or I don't think it's bad. The basket on this thing is quite nice. It does have a rubber boot on it. And one thing that's I like and maybe I don't like, I don't know, but it has the screw down terminals on it, which I think overall are probably a better idea than the spring terminals. So, you know, and it's got the machined diamond cut, they call it, or whatever on it. It kind of matches their product line. So this thing really does fit well with the rest of the stuff that Recoil does. So
All right, well, it's late here in the lab, and I just gotta say that this Recoil sub really, honestly, it surprised me. It's quite a bit better than what I thought. A lot of these kind of price range subs that are kind of more, kind of high output SPL, kind of budget banger kind of subs, generally don't sound very good. And I'm curious to see how this thing sounds in a ported box. I was kind of going more for the SQL kind of thing. A lot of the subs that are going to be in this same kind of test are going to be used in the same manner. And I think that in the sealed box, this thing stayed really nice and tight, and it never felt like it was out of control or really boomy. And I even listened to like live recordings where sometimes a subwoofer will kind of get kind of funky, and you just get this weird kind of bass sounds out of it. But it was clean, it was tight, it was definitely very musical, and it was something that I would be cool with listening to every day. I've had some other subs in there that were like, yeah, it makes noise. This is definitely not one of those. And I think for the $400, I think it's a pretty good bargain. And like I said, I beat on this thing for a good solid week, and it feels nice, and I think it did really well. So, anyways, if you like it, go over to their website, check it out, and we'll have more of these sub shootouts coming soon. There'll be a playlist in the description, so watch for them when they come out. Catch you next time.